Let's just check in on how the markets in Mauritius have fared for the day. The overall market there up by 0.25%. Looking at that key banking sector, you've got Mauritius Commercial Bank, which was flat at 191 rupees, and certainly State Bank of Mauritius has been in spotlight post earnings. That earnings release, the stock up almost 1% on the day on the back of the stronger earnings coming through on that front. Just checking in on the hotel sector, New Mauritius Hotels sitting flat at 67 rupees. That, of course, at the end of the trading week for the hotel sector, but we're still seeing a strong rally come through for the likes of Lux Island, up almost 5% on the day, and then Sun Resorts a slip back in that stock to 28 rupees. Just checking in on how that sugar sector is faring, you got Omnicane sitting up by 0.8%. ENL Land also stronger there on the day. Just a quick check-in on how the currency is trading against the US dollar. 30.7 is what we're seeing. Well, indices over in Mauritius have ended the week on a positive note, that with the SEMDEX up by 1/3%. Now, the largest banking group saw several crosses in the session, and we also saw some company news coming through during the course of the week. Let's get into all of this, what it means for markets going forward. Vishal Joyram, Head of Wealth Management at State Bank of Mauritius, is joining us from Mauritius. Thanks for joining us today, Vishal. Just a quick comment on the market overall and some of the key stocks that we're seeing moving, because I mentioned State Bank of Mauritius, and we're seeing certainly buying into that stock post results, and then we've also seen strong movements in Lux Island. So just take us through overall market movements for the day.
Actually, very similar trading patterns over the last couple of days in Mauritius on the SEMDEX. Today the market was up 25 basis points, was up 1.2% for the week. The SBM actually announced its result on Wednesday afternoon after market hours, and with earnings up 20% on the year. So this has generated a lot of interest on the share from both local and international investors yesterday and today, and actually the share represented above 75% of the daily volume traded on both days.
Yeah.
Lux was actually one of the largest gainers today as well. Stock was up 4.8%, finishing the session at 24 rupees. But having said that, the stock was thinly traded, about 16,000 shares traded for the session.
One of the key themes shaping the market at the moment is the earnings releases, and we saw 13 companies on the official list release their earnings this week. So in terms of what is a key theme that we're seeing when it comes to drivers of earnings and the underlying theme representing the overall tone in the economy, what would you take out of this week?
Right. I think the interesting thing this week is, as you rightly said, on the official list we had 13 companies coming out with their earnings. Most of the companies posted growth in their earnings, except for the insurance companies, which was kind of expected following the flooding that occurred in March earlier this year, where a lot of claims actually came and hit those companies. So that affected their bottom line for this quarter.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward, just looking at the overall performance of the market, we see the SEMDEX, which was up around 9% year to date, and it has been, if you call 9% a laggard, it's been a laggard if you look at that relative to the US market, where we've seen a 21% gain, and then Europe's markets with a 13% gain. Do you see some catch up to developed world markets, specifically, I suppose, the European story right now, which is playing out, where we saw that the GDP recovery story being indicated by those Q2 GDP figures?
Yes, I mean, we would like to think that there's a positive correlation between indicators being the green in the UK or in Europe and our local economy. Indeed, we have seen the indicators in the UK very positive recently, and there was actually the number of tourist arrival numbers that came out on Monday, and there has been quite a jump from UK tourists going up 26% for the month. So that is very positive, and no later than Wednesday there was better than expected growth, GDP growth in France, Germany, and also in Portugal. So that is we hope going to be very good news for the country going forward.
Yeah.
Yes, the index, the SEMDEX, has been lagging behind year to date. I mean more if you look at it on a yearly basis. Historically, the SEMDEX had outperformed most of the developed markets, so we are expecting some pickup in the medium term there.
I mean, just looking at tourist arrivals, Europe still represents around 55% of overall tourist arrivals. We saw those figures coming through for the month of July, where we saw arrivals up by 1.6%. So what are your thoughts in terms of how those numbers indicate we're likely to see, or what they mean basically for the hotel sector going forward, given, I suppose, we saw the GDP figures as well, and then still Europe dominating when it comes to tourists?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, revenues from exports being generated by Europe represent about 60%, and 20% of these actually come from the tourism sector. So it's quite an important indicator for us. But what we like to see, what we have identified recently, is a change in pattern on the number of tourist arrivals, a diversification pattern basically, with more and more tourists coming from emerging economies like China and India. So although still small, I mean China still represents about 5% of the total number of tourist arrivals, but I think it will be called to increase over the years.
So, I mean, that's an encouraging signal in terms of diversifying overall, you know, I suppose the concentration that we have seen when it comes to the reliance on the European market. But the hotel sector has been classified as one as having too much capacity in the past few years. Do you see that that it's in a lot better shape right now as we see an emergence in terms of tourist arrivals coming through from Europe?
Well, yeah, the number of rooms in the hotel industry has been increasing quite steadily, but the number of flights haven't. So this is going to be an important aspect to tackle in the future. And indeed, but with the recovery in the medium term, if recovery happens, we'd like to think that hotels that haven't slashed their prices and have maintained a good quality of service over the past years will certainly generate and profit from the rebound.
Yeah, and the country has also been spending a lot of money on infrastructure projects right now that to support economic growth, to support trade, to support the tourism sector. I mean, how do you rate the money that's been going into key capital projects from a government perspective?
Yeah, that is a very good point, Samantha. In fact, we have the new airport opening up next month in September, on September 12th. We've had drainage work in the port, in the seaport, with the objective to welcome larger ships. We've had construction of roads across the islands. We are now talking again about having a light railway on the island as well. And all these will certainly contribute to increasing productivity in the long term. So yes, that is a big point, infrastructure.
I mean, all in all, when I'm listening to the tone really that's coming through in the interview, it seems one of optimism. You know, overall, it looks like things are looking brighter ahead. Is it time to start looking seriously when it comes to investment opportunities in the Mauritian market, seeing as all indicators are turning positive right now?
I think we have to be cautiously optimistic. The banks have done very well throughout the crisis, given their very, minimal exposure or no exposure at all to mortgages and complex securities like CDOs to Europe and America in general. And it all depends on how long the recession will last abroad. So we have to take this into consideration as well. So optimism, yes, but cautiously optimistic.